Dear fellow truth seekers, thank you and welcome for visiting my channel, MythoReligio. MythoReligio is a video channel based on a book series with the same name about religious comparison studies between the stories in Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism and Buddhism, directly from their sacred books and world mythologies, hence the name MythoReligio. The purpose is to retrace the prehistory of humanity, since I'm not fully satisfied with either the explanations from the point of view of creationist nor evolutionist. There are so many missing links in both explanations. If you feel the same, then you are on the right channel. In this channel, I will also analyze about the prehistory of humanity from the archaeological records, modern scientific point of view, and other alternative theories such as the ancient alien theories and Atlantis or Lemuria legends. After thorough research of circa 30 years, I recognize many similarities between all religious stories and even mythologies, and surprisingly, some of them are in accordance or even beyond modern science that have been proven as correct. Thus, I came to the conclusion that all religions must have come from the same source. And all these religious stories and mythologies, although heavily jumbled up, are actually telling one mega story, the true prehistory of our common ancestors. This mega story is quite different than what we have been told to believe and will truly blow your mind, as it is more fascinating than our imagination. If you have watched the earlier videos in this channel, I believe you can see some of the similarities too. If you haven't and you truly want to do a religious comparative study, I suggest that you do so. The best way to do a comprehensive religious study via this channel is by watching the videos starting from number 1 and continue until this present video and so on. That way you will see a clear pattern. In this channel, I will share almost all that I have written in my book series. However, there is one book so far that I cannot share in this channel due to its sensitive, shocking and dark nature, and also might be considered controversial to some, but I believe it sheds more light to the above conclusion. If you want to read this around 500 pages ebook with many full-color illustrations, you are more than welcome to download book number 5 entitled History of the Dark Side, that is available for free in ebook format that can be found in my website www.mythoreligio.com. You only have to give your email address and it will be sent to you directly. And no, I won't share your email address nor send any advertisement. The link is in the description box. If you want to get the physical book, kindly go to amazon.com. Now let's continue with this week's video. Evolution from land to air. Is it possible? Dear fellow truth seekers, for the last few weeks I have shared with you the scientific theories on the origin of life, i.e. the theory of evolution and the Big Bang theory, for our religious versus science comparison study. I did this in order to find answers to the questions that are not answered satisfactorily by religion. In the last video, I have shared with you one of the many missing links in the theory of evolution that haven't been answered by science satisfactorily, i.e. about evolution of animals on land, mainly from reptiles to mammals. Now let's continue to analyze the next stage of evolution. According to evolution theory, some reptiles evolved into mammals and some evolved into birds. How did this happen? There are two theories regarding the evolution from reptiles to birds. The arboreal theory. The first argues that the ancestors of birds descended to the ground from the trees. As a result, these ancestors are alleged to be reptiles that lived in the treetops and came to possess wings gradually as they jumped from one branch to another. This is known as the arboreal theory. The cursorial theory. The other, the cursorial theory, which was first proposed by Samuel Williston in 1879, suggests that birds progressed to the air from the land. The basic assumption of the running theory is that the front legs of some reptiles gradually develop into wings as they wave their arms around in order to catch insects. However, no explanation is provided of how the wing, a highly complex organ, came into existence as a result of this flapping. What? So if I flap my arms all my life, will I or my descendants be able to fly too? And will my descendants evolve into fishes if I swim all my life? I could not believe my eyes when I first read this, and I could not believe that these explanations are still used sometimes today. These theories got me thinking. Actually, the idea of fish replacing their fins with limbs is also quite difficult to accept. We are just so much used of seeing the pictures that it seems plausible. Think about it. The idea of a fish gradually become land-dwelling animal is just as hard to believe as humans gradually become aquatic creatures if we swim long enough, don't you think? Unless there are enough fossil records of intermediary forms, and in this case there are none. So how did reptiles become flying birds? None of the distinct mechanism of birds, which have completely different structure from land-dwelling animals, can be explained by gradual evolution. The question of how the perfect structure of wings came into being as a result of consecutive haphazard mutations remains completely unanswered. There is no way to explain how the front arms of a reptile could have changed into perfectly functioning wings as a result of a distortion in its genes, i.e. mutation. Moreover, just having wings is not sufficient for a land organism to fly. Land-dwelling organisms are devoid of many other structural mechanisms that birds use for flying. For example, the bones of birds are much lighter than those of land-dwelling organisms. Their lungs function in a very different way. They have a different muscular and skeletal system and a very specialized heart circulatory system. These features are prerequisites of flying needed at least as much as wings. All these mechanisms had to exist at the same time and all together. They could not have formed gradually by being accumulated. Another trait that poses an insurmountable gap between birds and reptiles is the feathers of birds, which have a form entirely peculiar to them. The bodies of reptiles are covered with scales, whereas the bodies of birds are covered with feathers. How did bird feathers evolve from reptile scales? There are no similarities between scales and feathers. When bird feathers are examined in detail, it is seen that they are made up of thousands of tiny tendrils attached to one another with hooks. This unique design results in superior aerodynamic performance. A professor of physiology and neurobiology from the University of Connecticut, A.H. Brush, said, "There is no fossil evidence to prove that bird feathers evolved from reptile scales. On the contrary, feathers appear suddenly in the fossil record as an undeniably unique character distinguishing birds." Ernst Mayr in Systematics and the Origin of Species wrote, "It is a considerable strain on one's credulity to assume that finely balanced systems, such as certain sense organs, the eye of vertebrates or the bird's feather, could be improved by random mutations." Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx is considered as a transitional form between reptiles and birds. The supposedly ancestor of present-day birds lived approximately 150 million years ago. The theory holds that some small dinosaurs such as Velociraptors or Dromaeosaurs evolved by acquiring wings and then starting to fly. Thus, Archaeopteryx is assumed to be a transitional form that branched off from its dinosaur ancestors and started to fly for the first time. However, the latest studies of Archaeopteryx fossils indicate that this creature is absolutely not a transitional form, but an extinct species of bird, having some insignificant differences from today's birds. The thesis that Archaeopteryx was a half-bird that could not fly perfectly was popular until not long ago. The absence of a sternum in this creature was held up as the most important evidence that this bird could not fly properly. The sternum is a breastbone to which the muscles required for flight are attached. In our day, this breastbone is observed in all flying and non-flying birds. But the seventh Archaeopteryx fossil, which was found in 1992, caused great astonishment. The reason was that in this recently discovered fossil, the breastbone that was long assumed to be missing was discovered to have existed after all. This fossil was described in Nature magazine, volume 382, 1996 as follows. The recently discovered seventh specimen of the Archaeopteryx preserves a partial, rectangular sternum, long suspected but never previously documented. This attests to its strong flight muscles. This discovery invalidated the mainstay of the claims that Archaeopteryx was a half-bird that could not fly properly. Moreover, the structure of the bird's feathers became one of the most important pieces of evidence confirming that Archaeopteryx was a flying bird in the real sense. The asymmetric feather structure of Archaeopteryx is indistinguishable from that of birds living today, and indicates that it could fly perfectly well. As the eminent paleontologist Carl O. Dunbar in Historical Geology states, because of its feathers, Archaeopteryx is distinctly to be classed as a bird. Another fact that was revealed by the structure of Archaeopteryx feathers was its warm-blooded metabolism. As was explained in my previous videos, reptiles and dinosaurs are cold-blooded animals, whose body heat fluctuates with the temperature of their environment. A very important function of the feathers on birds is the maintenance of a constant body temperature. The fact that Archaeopteryx had feathers showed that it was a real warm-blooded bird that needed to regulate its body heat in contrast to dinosaurs. Two important points evolutionist biologists rely on when claiming Archaeopteryx was a transitional form are the claws on its wings and its teeth. It is true that Archaeopteryx had claws on its wings and teeth in its mouth, but these traits do not imply that the creature bore any kind of relationship to reptiles. Besides, two bird species living today, Tauraco and Hoatzin, have claws which allow them to hold onto branches. These creatures are fully birds with no reptilian characteristics. That is why it is completely groundless to assert that Archaeopteryx is a transitional form just because of the claws on its wings. Neither do the teeth in Archaeopteryx's beak imply that it is a transitional form. Evolutionists say that these teeth are reptile characteristics, since teeth are not a typical feature of birds. Today, some reptiles have teeth, while others do not. Moreover, Archaeopteryx is not the only bird species to possess teeth. It is true that there are no toothed birds in existence today, but when we look at the fossil record, we see that both during the time of Archaeopteryx and afterwards, even until fairly recently, a distinct bird genus existed that could be categorized as birds with teeth. The most important point is that the tooth structure of Archaeopteryx and other birds with teeth is totally different from that of their alleged ancestors, the dinosaurs. The well-known ornithologists L. D. Martin, J. D. Stewart, and K. N. Whetstone observed that Archaeopteryx and other similar birds have teeth with flat-topped surfaces and large roots. Yet, the teeth of theropod dinosaurs, the alleged ancestors of these birds, are protuberant like saws and have narrow roots. These researchers also compared the wrist bones of Archaeopteryx and their alleged ancestors, the dinosaurs, finding no similarity between them. Studies by anatomists like S. Tarsitano, M. K. Hecht, and A. D. Walker have revealed that some of the similarities that John Ostrom and others have seen between Archaeopteryx and dinosaurs were in reality misinterpretations. All these findings indicate that Archaeopteryx was not a transitional link, but only a bird that fell into a category that can be called toothed birds. Archaeopteryx versus Confuciusornis. Lian Hai-hu and Zhongzi Zhao, two paleontologists at the Chinese Institute of Vertebrate Paleontology, discovered a new bird fossil in 1995 and named it Confuciusornis. This fossil is almost the same age as Archaeopteryx but has no teeth in its mouth. In addition, its beak and feathers share the same features as today's birds. Confuciusornis has the same skeletal structure as present day, but also has claws on its wings, just like Archaeopteryx. Another structure peculiar to birds called the pygostyle, which supports the tail feathers, was also found in Confuciusornis. In short, this fossil, which is the same age as Archaeopteryx, was previously thought to be the earliest bird and was accepted as a seminal reptile look very much like a bird living today. This fact has invalidated the Archaeopteryx to be the primitive ancestor of all birds. Pat Shipman, Birds Do It, Did Dinosaur. New Scientist, February 1st, 1997. Larry Martin, a specialist on earlier birds from the University of Kansas, also opposes the theory that birds are descended from dinosaurs. Discussing the contradiction that evolution falls into on the subject, he states, "To tell you the truth, if I had to support the dinosaur origin of birds with those characters, I'd be embarrassed every time I had to get up and talk about it." Pat Shipman, Birds Do It, Did Dinosaurs. New Scientist, February 1st, 1997. So, once again, upon analysis, scientific explanation concerning the evolution from land to air, like evolution on land, is actually hard to defend. Next week, we will continue with the analysis of the last stage of evolution, i.e. the hominid evolution from apes to humans. But for now, allow me to thank you for watching and hope to see you next week.